Welcome to Recovery with Root, a podcast centered on topics surrounding mental health and addiction. Through our Advanced Recovery Institute, a new entity of the Root Center for Advanced Recovery, we are committed to research and training to elevate clinical care. We hope you find this podcast informative, and most of all, we hope that it helps improve the lives of others. Remember, we're in this together, and recovery is possible. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Recovery with Root. My name is Margot Farrell, Chief of Staff here at the Root Center for Advanced Recovery, joined today by Demi Negron, who is one of our senior bilingual counselors at our Manchester clinic. So excited because when this episode airs, it will officially be 2026. So Demi, welcome. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So much to talk about. You know, we talk a lot, and I know I've actually done stuff with you in the past about how to stay safe during holidays. Now we want to shift our gear a little bit and look towards after the holidays. So when this airs, it's going to be the first episode of January. The holidays have come to a close. All of the fanfare kind of quiets down. What do you see typically with our patients once the holidays have come to a close? I know the holidays can be a very difficult time for people in recovery.
Absolutely. I want to say it's one of the most challenging times that we see with patients, just because a lot of things are happening, right? Normally we have a lot of homelessness here in the clinics. We see a lot of homelessness. We see a lot of mental health. And we see just patients going through a lot of things individually in their lives. So after the holidays, it's kind of like, what happens next, right? Like we mentioned before, it's cold. The holidays already passed. We still got patients facing homelessness. We still got patients trying to figure out what to do for a meal next time. So we do see a very strong incline of mental health still persistent. So it is a very hard time that us as counselors, we work with the patients on one-on-one, on referrals, to try to see how we can help them by also creating a space in our clinics where the patients feel welcome at all times and feel that they do have a support system.
When we're looking at the new year, obviously a lot of people are talking about New Year's resolutions. It's the time to make our resolutions. What do we want to change? What do we want to improve this year? That can also be very overwhelming because sometimes for someone who may be starting out their process or just learning about their mental health diagnoses, things of that nature, it can seem overwhelming. Like, where do I begin? What do you say to someone when they're coming into you and they're looking to make some new goals? They're looking to make some changes. How do you start that process?
I love that question. I love it because it's something that we're already doing now. And it becomes with just continue to have those conversations. For example, this month, we do our own groups. And the questions we've been asking patients is, tell me about your year. How your year has happened? Like, or anything in the year that you are proud of, anything in the year that you wish you did differently, right? Having to start these conversations now before the holidays begin. And then what we do is like, we're also using that space to have a conversation for next year. What do you want for your goals? What is something that you look forward to? And it could be overwhelming because a lot of patients are like, I don't know, right? But having that conversation of, but can you tell me something in the next 6 months? What is the goal? In the next month, sometimes we need to start small. Small goals go a long way and they can build together to create a big goal. So starting just small and having those conversations and having a conversation with them also about, it's a new year. What is important to you? What is important? Sometimes it's a recovery goal that they have. Sometimes a life goal that they have. But giving them the space to be able to build that and being able to have and feel safe to have a conversation about it is what's important.
So starting small seems like it's really kind of where it all starts, because you can think about, I want to change this. I want to change that. I want to get better at this. And then that's where sometimes if you have too much on your plate, you don't even begin anything, I'm sure. Yeah. So starting small is the first thing I'm hearing you, and maybe looking at shorter time frames. Is that also correct?
Yeah. So sometimes we love when a patient comes in and it's like, I want to make sure that in a year I get a house or I have insurance and things like that. We love that because it sounds like they're really motivated. But sometimes we tell them, okay, so let's think about what can we do now? What can we do by next Wednesday? Something small, because big goals can get very overwhelming. But it's also good to have those big goals because it sounds like sometimes that's what patients look forward to, stay motivated to accomplish that goal. So sometimes we start small. Can we do in a week? what can we do in a month? And then we tell them, hey, in a month when you come back, I will check in with you about this goal. And start small, but also making sure that they also not only start small when it comes to their goals, but also we open the conversation about boundaries as well in order to accomplish that goal. And then we go from there. So that's another thing too.
Oh, so okay. So we're starting small.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at short identifiable time. So whether it be a week, then we'll look at our month goal, then we'll look at our 6-month goal.
Yeah.
Then we're looking at what's going to come into contact with the goal. So you're talking about boundaries. Talk a little bit more about boundaries and then how that plays in.
Yes. So boundaries are very important. No matter what, boundaries is something that is important. And sometimes we start by explaining to the patients what is the boundary, right? Like, what are the limitations that you establish with anyone that comes near you, or, in just personal space. And we go from there and explain to them, because you'd be surprised the amount of patients who don't even know what a boundary is. And then we explain the different types of boundaries, and we explain to them, okay, and you're going to, at the end of the month, you're going to a family party. Okay, are you nervous? What are your feelings? What are your thoughts? And sometimes, surprise, we do have those conversations where patients are like, I'm a little nervous to go. And that we use that space in the report to say, why are you? It sounds like you were really excited. And then they're like, well, so-and-so's going to be there. They usually bring up my recovery, and I'm just very nervous about it. And we have that open conversation of like, we can practice. What are some things we can say? What are some things that we can do in a space like that? And explaining to the patient. So it's important to not only educate also, but use that experience and that rapport to build better skills with the patient. And that's what I'm saying, like in regards to boundaries, is so important, not only during the holidays, but even after the holidays, because we want to make sure that patients feel comfortable where they're at and who they come in contact with, because boundaries can affect our lives in many, many different ways. So goals and boundaries is something that we really focus during this time around, on top of stress and how we deal with that. But I wouldn't say those are the main ones that we see as we encounter the new year, and we move forward with that.
What would you say do people struggle with the most when it comes to setting their new goals? At what point in time tends to be the most difficult? Like, so sometimes you start off the new year, everyone's excited, I've got these goals. And then a couple weeks go by. Is it a couple weeks? Is it a couple months? When do you start to see that the struggle or the reality of what this change means starts to set in?
I wouldn't say, I feel like it's when it comes to making the action, doing the action of the goal. We love when a patient is motivated. We love when we come up with a plan. But then something happens that it becomes hard. And sometimes we see patients shutting down. And like, it could be something as, I don't want to say simple, because it's not as simple. Patient needed to go down to one of the government office to get a new ID, and transportation didn't show up. Sometimes what we see is the patient, I guess one more thing, I will not go. And it becomes of like, okay, how do we build the motivation that, okay, it's okay, things happen today, can we plan for the next day? So sometimes we see a little bit of not a strong motivation when it comes time to take an action, depending on other barriers that may come in contact. So sometimes when they encounter other barriers, that's when we see the patient maybe losing motivation, or kind of like, sometimes we see patients, a patient told me, I feel like life is trying to tell me something. I'm like, no, it's okay. Can we plan around that? It's okay. Sometimes we just need to just brainstorm different ideas. So I want to say sometimes when we see that action stage is when we see.
And when you have outside factors that really have no control over. So maybe it's your ride, or it's someone else that you were relying on to help you with something. What are some other things that people can do when they get into those predicaments where maybe your ride doesn't show up, maybe somebody canceled on you last minute? What are your words of advice that you tell people when things don't go to plan?
It's one of those things that is like, sometimes it's unexpected, right? So when patients tell us like, this happened and I was not able to go, things didn't go as planned, right? First of all, we listen. We're humans, and since frustration is normal, because especially as counselors, it's something that we know the patient was really looking forward to get done, right? We provide a safe space where they're able to talk about that frustration, get the frustration out. But then we use a solution-focused mindset. And what that means is that, okay, what can we do in order to make sure that this gets accomplished? By using whatever you have that it can get that you can do, which means let's say you need a medical cab to go to see a doctor. Okay, can I help you by assisting you in getting the appointment, or calling the medical cab to make sure that that's completed? And we use that in order to make sure that we're working alongside the patient. We can plan it out together, because sometimes they just need somebody to listen and somebody to help them brainstorm what to do if this happens again. Some patients we see, they're used to working by themselves. They haven't had a good support system. They just haven't had somebody to guide them sometimes. And sometimes it takes a village.
I was just going to say, it seems like another really important part is you don't do it alone.
Yes.
You don't need to do any of this alone. You know, your goals, your dreams, your aspirations for 2026, it helps when you have a support system. And I know for some people, it may feel like they don't have one, but here at Root, you know, we offer that. We're going to be your support system, if nothing else. And talk about how important it is to have somebody to just bounce ideas off, or somebody to help you, as you said, brainstorm or think of another solution. Because sometimes when we're struggling and we get by ourselves and we get in our own heads, we can stop ourselves in our own tracks.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that I want to say patients really like about Roots, is that we, every time they come into those doors, it's always kind of like a welcoming face, like, welcome, so happy that you're here today. And patients have said it's such a welcoming feeling to know that things may not go as well in life and things like that, but I know I can come here. And, you know, building that relationship, that's why we have groups that patients can go. We have individual sessions with patients. And even when patients do attend the different types of groups that we have all across the agency, they build relationships with one another. And they even, I have seen patients find employment by attending groups, by saying, hey, I'm struggling, I'm trying to find a job. And then another patient may say, where do you live? Let's connect you. My job is hiring. So it's so beautiful to see the connections that they not only build with the counselors and nursing staff and PSRs, but also with each other, and how they use each other for connection, for building relationships, for accomplishing so many things in their own recovery. And this is done by, again, building their village. Many patients don't come from a place where they can say, I had a village growing up. But it's also making sure that we're there for the patients and having those conversations about what is a positive support system to you? What are you looking forward to? How do you want that to look like? And we've seen a lot of patients find that support system here at the Root Center and when one another. So it's one of the things that I think here the Root Center does a very well job, and patients see it, and patients feel it, and patients do report on it.
What would you say are some of the things that people are most commonly trying to work on? What do you hear the most of? What are some of the most common goals that you're hearing? I mean, besides, obviously, we're here for mental health and addiction, so many people here on their recovery journey trying to stay sober. What are some other common goals that you hear?
A lot, surprisingly, one of the main goals that I often hear, at least in my clinic, is patients wanting to get financially stable is one of them. Another one is getting to see a medical provider. Many patients have not seen a medical provider in 2, 3, 4 years. So a lot of the times what I see is patients stating, hey, Demi, I feel very good in my recovery. I'm doing great. I'm doing everything right, but I generally need to see a doctor. And we have those conversations about, like, tell me what you're feeling, tell me what's going on. And then the patient will say something like, well, I haven't seen a doctor in 4 years. Oh, whoa. We definitely got to connect you to a provider, right? So being able where, when it comes to mental health and recovery, a lot of patients do come in focus in those topics, but then when they're ready for something else too, and sometimes we work in all these different aspects at the same time. We try our best, but then when they shift to be able to say, I'm ready for medical, and being able to support them through that, because they could be challenging in making an appointment. How are you going to get there? Sometimes when we have patients with English is not their first language, you've connected to a provider that speaks your language, right? So I want to say connecting to a medical provider is one of them, but also financially, we do have, again, a lot of homelessness in our clinic. And how do we connect you to services in the community, right? How do we connect you to case management, to other agencies that can help you with that? So I want to say those two are the main elements that I see, at least I can speak about the most.
And then at least, as you're mentioning these things, and it going back to what you were saying of picking one goal, maybe your most important goal, right? So you're trying to solve the issues of homelessness, or you're trying to solve the financial stability, finding a job, picking the one, maybe picking the most important and starting there. And then I'm sure as one foot goes in front of the other and one goal is worked on, then you start to open the door for other goals after that.
Absolutely. And that's why when we do recovery plans with the patients, we sit down with the patients and we look at all dimensions, right? Medical, recovery, mental health, because we want to make sure that we're also slowly touching other goals as well. We're trying not to overall the patient, but also trying to make sure, hey, in 6 months from now, I know we're focusing on this goal right now, and we love that. We're here to support you. But FYI, we may want to start thinking about the next goal. And sometimes you'll be surprised how patients come back saying, hey, I haven't accomplished this one, but I did start thinking about this one. And I was able to make an appointment with a mental health provider, or I was able to schedule a physical. And it's so amazing to see by working with that recovery plan, you are building the patient's treatment, their goals, and where they want to accomplish. Because believe it or not, by we having these discussions about, hey, mental health is important, right? You're telling me right now that you don't want to get out of bed. You're telling me right now that you are having a rough time speaking with family and things like that. Maybe we should see a mental health provider, right? And they may say at that time, they may say, I'm not interested, I'm fine. I want to focus on my dose, I want to focus on my recovery. Okay. But then they may come back next week and they may say something along the lines, I thought about what you told me, and I didn't realize how bad it was getting until I left here. So without realizing, we're already putting the seed in their head of like the things that sometimes they haven't been thought about their feelings and what they're going through, but sometimes they're in survival mode, so they're go, right? So without even realizing, we're putting seeds, and that's why it's so important to have these discussions about goals in different ways and different topics, because without realizing, we are helping the patient build a treatment in different ways.
So starting small, picking a manageable goal, your most important goal, having a community, and then also being open to having that community. Because I know sometimes you can come in and we try to offer that community, but maybe someone's not ready to receive that community. But what I'm hearing you say here is that a lot of times patients are getting ideas from other patients or from their counselors just from being open to having the conversation. So maybe working on a goal is just having a conversation, because you open that door just by starting to speak with somebody who you may not speak to on a normal basis.
Absolutely. Having that conversation, I want to say, building the rapport, the relationship is so important, because patients may not be willing to open that door if they don't feel comfortable, or they're just not ready to have that conversation, which is what's so important, to be empathetic with whoever you meet, be open-minded to have those conversations without judgment. It is so important to ensure that we are not providing stigma to anyone that comes through our doors, and making sure that they feel welcome. It is so important how much a simple "Hi, I'm happy that you're here" goes a long way. And we see it happening every single time these patients come in, and they sit with you, they speak about their whole life, they tell you everything, and you just sit amazed of everything sometimes the patients go through, and they will tell you, I'm fine. And you're just sitting there like, wow, you are truly amazing. So it's just one of those things that I would say, it takes, like you mentioned, sometimes it takes a village, and being able to be open to, if we don't have the village, how can we build it?
I think that's also really important for those who are listening who, we're talking a lot about how our clients may feel when they're coming in and they're dealing with our staff. But this just goes to show, too, that if you're someone who's out on the street, who's listening to this conversation, just to go to show that you don't know what anybody is going through. And you don't know what somebody has on their plate, what they're trying to accomplish. And sometimes just a friendly face, a friendly gesture and interaction can really help somebody. And that can be what helps them get to their goal. Sometimes it's, the world is getting us down. And that's what's stopping us on our way to try and fight these goals that we have before we even get started. So I think just what I'm hearing from you, just as a passerby, that I could, we could all be a little bit kinder. We could all have conversations with people a little bit more, just pick our heads up from our phones and say hello to someone or give a smile. And that could go a long way, is what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. I tell everyone that, look, a simple hello and a how are you goes a long way. because like you mentioned, we don't know what anybody's going through. We don't know the person sitting next to them might be, before they got home they got to work, they went through so many things, but they still made it on time, right? And just being able to have an open and honest conversation and be genuine, because people can tell when people are genuine. And it is so important, and it's something that, especially as we're going into the new year, we don't know what people are going through. We don't know what patients have already gone through to be able to make it to this point at the end of the year. But we always look forward to what comes next, right? And exciting as it is, I just had a group and a patient. I also asked them, tell me about your year. Let's review your year. I call it the 2025 recap. Say, what are you proud of? And what are you looking forward to the new year? And our patient actually told me, you know what? I haven't thought about that. And I said, well, let's think about that. And they were, I think I had a good year. And I said, that's amazing. And they said, I didn't realize that I accomplished my goal. I finally got housing. And I said, we love that. And then they said, but not only that, I connected with my daughters. And I knew that was a big thing for him. But I wanted to see if he was able, he felt comfortable and he was able to share it. Because we also want to respect that too. And he said, I didn't even thought about that. And I said, sounds to me like you accomplished something big. And, he got teary. He said, I did. And I said, so what is your goal for next year? He said, honestly, I want to connect more with my family. But if anything, he said, I don't know, but I'm excited. And being able to say still, sometimes we don't know. But sometimes it's about the feeling. And that's why when people don't, when patients may say, I don't know what goal I want to have. Sometimes about, let's think back to how 2025
How do you want to feel?
How do you want to feel? What are you looking for? And sometimes patients can feel how we, that excitement, and they might start thinking about it. So we don't know. Sometimes it's what we give the patients can really take on and be able to say, you know what? I haven't thought about that. Let me think about that right now. Which is why sometimes, it's so exciting to speak about goals. What comes next? So that's how I put it sometimes. What comes next?
Well, I love that you said too, to focus on next year too. Mm-hmm. It's important to focus on this year. So if you're sitting here and you're thinking to yourself, you're listening to this, you're saying, well, geez, Margot, Demi, I have no idea what I want to work on either. What went well in 2025? Absolutely. Maybe focusing on that. And how do you feel about the good things? Think of those good feelings. And then how can you expand on that? So for that patient that you were talking about, feeling really good about connecting with family, okay, that gives an indication in 2026. That made me feel really good in 2025. I want more of that. How can I do Absolutely. More of that? How can I better that? So I love how you're saying sometimes taking a step back and looking at your year as a whole. So often we're just on to the next. We're looking at the next thing that we don't even look at what we've already accomplished.
And it can get so overwhelming because you can do so many things in a year. And it can get so much, patients may feel like, oh, I don't know, they may feel stuck. And it's about kind of like, okay, let's take a step back. Tell me what went well this year. Tell me what didn't also. Because also having those conversations, tell me what didn't. So we can plan out. Because maybe for next year, maybe we can work on those things. Mm-hmm. And being able to, again, bounce back. Because sometimes patients just need somebody to listen, right? And being able to we go back to that relationship to build a rapport and being able to say, tell me what didn't work well, tell me what did. But also celebrating what did too is important. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes, again, a year is a long time. And we can do so many things in 1 year. And sometimes taking the space to celebrate the wins of the year can motivate someone for next year. So I just feel like, it's one of those moments when you really get to hear the patient speak about that, speak about their year, speak what they're excited, and really celebrate their wins, because not everybody has that.
For sure. Well, Demi, I think you've brought up a lot of good points, a lot of things for us to think about as we go into this new year. Hopefully it's a prosperous, happy, healthy year for everyone. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you think people should know?
No, I think this, it was very important to have a conversation about planning for next year. I think the most important part that I want to make sure that we all understand is to, we don't know what the person next to us might be going through, especially as we enter a new year, as we celebrate the holidays. Not everybody has that. It's important to be gracious of what we have, being open-minded, but also be nice to people, but be empathetic and just be there to one another. I think that goes a long way. To just a simple hi, how are you? I'm glad that you're here goes a long way.
Absolutely. Be kind, be empathetic, and
Be
give
kind.
a hello. Yes. Thank you, Demi, so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of our podcast, Recovery with Root. As always, stay connected with us on social media to learn about when next podcast episodes will drop. You can comment, ask questions, even let us know about future topics that you'd like to see discussed. Until next time, remember, progress is the destination.